Batman! What is one of the most, if not the most popular story of all time in DC Comics, but Batman Year One. Let's talk about it today.
I am Batman. You are Una Man.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Is this your first time reading this?
Yeah, I don't even know who's Batman. No, this is my first time reading Batman Year One, yes. But I am very, very versed in Batman lore, and I've read a lot of different comics and stuff, but I've never read this one.
Okay, so I think you're probably more versed than me. Now, this is probably like my third time reading this. I did check my history. Purchased it in 2013, read it in 2015, and just now returning to it, excited to share this with you because I think it's great storytelling. I think it's innovative visually. I think it's highly relatable in terms of the humanity I think these characters show, that I think it's going to be hopefully a good talk today.
There is so much crammed into this, what I felt like was a very short run and a very easy read. There's a lot here. So, yeah, I don't know if one talk will do this book justice, but we'll see where we can go.
So I've read a little bit about, obviously we're just coming off of another Frank Miller comic here. We said, let's do some more Miller and Mazzucchelli here. And I think it's interesting that both the previous one, which was Daredevil, Born Again, as well as Batman Year One, they kind of revisit this origin, right? And if there's one thing like we know since 2008, and we've had this relaunch and launch of the Marvel movie series, and the DC Comics kind of struggling to keep the movies competitive the way that Marvel was, at least during the first generation there. I think it's interesting how often we're like, oh gosh, not another origin story. Like we can quickly reject it because we're just so sick and we've heard it before. But at the same time, like what is the purpose of the origin? Sure, it's a jumping on point. Sure, it makes a character ring true for how that author wants to tell that story. But I think there's also maybe an element of resonance, right? Like the 80s, when we look at crime and the sensationalization of it in the news, I think a darker, grittier Batman in a struggling 85 DC line, it resonated, I think, at the right time with the right message and with the right struggles of what it meant to kind of be in these struggling cities, if you will, that a new translation is important to resonate with, like the modern problems I think people have.
I think that comes back to also why Batman is so popular, is because he's so relatable. Now, obviously, some of the feats Batman pulls off is, hero, superhuman, but a lot of the comic, he is struggling with, how do I do this? How do I be Bruce Wayne and Batman? How do I be a force for good? And I think that's relatable to a lot of people. I could imagine picking this up not only as a child in the 1980s, but if I was, a teenager or a young man or even, a middle-aged man, picking up this comic and reading it, you could see the world outside, the reflection in the comic, and how you would want to be a force for good. How would you go about doing that if you had the means and unlimited resources to do so? And I think that Miller does a great job of navigating that by incorporating not only Batman and Bruce Wayne, but all the side characters, and how much they impact the story is so crucial. And it's not just the villains, but it's also, all the police and the commissioner and Gordon especially, who I don't know, maybe this is a hot take. I feel like this is Gordon's story. This is as much as his origin story as it is Batman's. I feel like Gordon is my favorite. I don't know if that's, sacrilege to say, but man, Jim Gordon kills it in this.
Well, you kind of have like two main thrusts through this, and maybe I took some notes here on what happened, and maybe we just kind of talk through each one. But you kind of have two main thrusts. You have like the Batman struggle and the Gordon struggle, And it's ultimately one of those storytelling mechanisms where you see how they start to intertwine and you see where they have things in common that bring them together to ultimately create this alliance. Like a well-known alliance throughout the years is the Gordon and Bruce Wayne Batman alliance. And I like the way that the stories are created out of necessity. Like it's not like they chose each other out of a desire, like out of a picking line. Like it was out of a desperate need. They both were born to create and complement each other when they're both trying to create something big for the city. It is what the story kind of conveys.
And not only that, they come to it from different approaches, right? Jim Gordon is by the book, no exceptions whatsoever in the beginning. And he's going after the corruption that's in Gotham, that's embedded in Gotham, not only in its criminal underbelly, but also in its police force. The commissioner is corrupt. The other police are corrupt. And he's fighting against this, sacrificing his own personal health and his personal, relationship with his wife. And he's got, a little baby on the way. And over the course of this, you see him evolve and change, that there has to be another way. And then Batman from the other side is looking at it from, the vigilante standpoint of how do I do this from a point of view of achieving the most good, because I'm going to mess beep up while trying to do this. So yeah, seeing that entanglement is just incredible. And the story just unfolds beautifully.
All right, so let's start out. I just took very brief notes. I came up with this idea like halfway through it, so hopefully I didn't mess it up, but I did my best. So we start out with kind of a fishes out of water story, two fish out of water. Gordon is arriving in the big pond of Gotham City, where you said he's a family man and he means well. He's a by the book guy, but I take issue with your interpretation that he's always going to do it by the book, because we saw even by the end of this part, he realizes Flass is corrupt. He doesn't like it. He doesn't like the way the city is corrupt. He hates his job, he even says on some levels later. But he gets back at Flass, right? Like, and it's not by the book. Like, in terms of tying him up, leaving him out naked, beating the crap out of him. Like, Gordon can send a vicious message, but like, it's almost like you as a reader feel that it was completely earned. You don't view it as a crime. You don't view it as a violent attack, because he is returning that message that was sent to him by the city, and you believe in his mission. You believe that, as the family man trying to make the world a better place for his kid, that he's justified in those actions. So you have this question of identity and transformation of, is the city going to change Gordon, or is Gordon going to change this city at this point? And you mentioned earlier too, like with Batman, you don't even know what Batman is yet until he's going out and he's not doing the best job with like this young girl. Like, he gets attacked by these people because he doesn't have any fear. He needs like those extra few seconds of fear in them to be able to react, and he's a human, so he's got to be able to do something to get an upper hand, right? And that's why he has to invent this identity problem, right? Because he knows he wants to change the city, because his backstory just makes sense, right? That quick flash of random crime killed his parents, so he's going to fight random crime for the rest of his life. And he starts small to see how he does, and he realizes he sucks at it. He realizes that he needs that identity and transformation in order to make a difference.
Yeah, that's where I was going, I think, with this, is they're both trying to find their path. And yes, Gordon, I think, is corrupted to a degree. I mean, he's not a Boy Scout in the beginning, but he realizes that he's not going to be Flass, but he's also not going to be a detriment to the city. He'll do what he has to. And Bruce is finding himself, and I think he's finding his true identity. And a lot of people have, talked about, is Bruce Wayne his identity, or is Batman his identity? And a lot of people lean towards that Batman is identity and Bruce Wayne is the mask. And I think that's where you kind of see this in here of, the training montage, and then him going on the street and interacting with the, ladies of the night and trying to, do good. And he realizes, I can't do this as Bruce Wayne. Even though he has a disguise on, he needs something more. He needs not an identity. he needs the fear. He needs an icon, and that's where I think you get the idea that Miller understands Batman. That the vision of a guy dressed up as a giant bat is something to be reckoned with.
To create that fear, right? To make the bad guy second guess his own choices in life.
Well, I mean, it's something that you see, a police officer in this and stuff. You might not be scared because you're like, oh, the cops are corrupt. They're not going to do anything. They have to play by the rules. But you see a giant bat beating the crap out of somebody, you're going to take notice. You're going to stop and pause.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, to me, as we move into the second issue, we talked about that transformation. I think we start to actually, we get the idea in the first issue, but we don't see the metamorphosis here really until the second issue, because this is where Gordon runs into a hostage situation, right? He's got a kid at home, right? Like putting your own life in danger for the sake of a random stranger because it's your job is a big ask. It's such a big ask. A lot of people, even people in Gordon's shoes, in that job, could fail to do that, right? Like they couldn't step up to be the person under pressure that they think they need to be.
Right.
And Gordon does it. He steps in and he saves the kids, right? And he even talks about how he hates his job, but it's who he is. It's how he's going to make a difference, and he's not going to let the city change him too much, at least, right? And he's ordered by the commissioner to start trying to hunt down the Batman right at this point. So you start to see the intertwining. Now in the Batman tale, that's where he during like this escape, he buys a suit and leaves money. So you see that he's a good guy. He saves the cat. You see that he saves the kid that's falling over the edge of the fire escape. And he saves him, even though it's at his own detriment, as the bad guys are beating him up. The kids are beating him up. He doesn't want to be a killer, right? So you see that he still has the heart in him, and he won't let the corruptness of the city. So I think we're starting to get the answer of, does the city change the man, or does the man change the city? These are two men that will not let the city change them, right? And they're starting to transform into these icons, as you put it, to try to make it different. And this is where he started with a small crime. He realizes the bat gives him the extra couple seconds. He immediately jumps up to the Falcone and commissioner dinner and says, you've been feasting on the city or whatever it is. Now none of you are safe. Like, this is his warning, his flare off into the night sky to let him know that he is going to get, I'm going to use the word now, we'll come back to it, vengeance for the death of his parents. He is fighting a war for his parents. And I think that's a perfect backstory. It needs no change. And it ends with Gordon and him teaming up to save the woman by the truck, right? Like they've now officially crossed paths. They've now officially intertwined, that even saving that one life is more important than the bigger city. It's all the good that you can do right now.
Issue 2 is totally about them becoming heroes. This is when you see that they are on parallel paths. Gordon in his lane, Batman in his lane, and the intersection of these two great heroes, and then how is that going to transpire?
Well, I think they're heroes in different ways too, right? Like, to me, Gordon is more idealistic, the way that he wants things to be. And I think Batman might be a little bit more realistic and tries to take the route that it will be the most, not violence, but the most force to get the change that he needs. And I think the combination of the realism and the idealism is what makes them such a fantastic duo, if you will.
Yeah. And I don't know if you remember, I was just flipping through here because this is my favorite panel of the entire comic, is the one you were talking about when he drops in on the mob boss's dinner and it says, "Ladies, gentlemen, you have eaten well." And it's such a cool picture. I'll show it here. That is my favorite panel. Just the art style and the subtlety of it is amazing. And then on the next page, you go back to Jordan and the commissioner's yelling at him and he says, "No excuses, Gordon. That vigilante goes under instantly, or it's your job." It's kind of the dichotomy of these two, of one is the hunter and others, the huntee. So yeah, it's so good.
wasn't like Commissioner like a couple pages before was like, yeah, Batman's not that big of a deal. He's inspiring the people. But as soon as it encroaches upon his territory, which shows that people can be very territorial, they could be very self-serving with their goals, right? Batman was fine as long as it was serving him in the keeping the city in line. But the second that Batman steps into his territory from small petty crimes up to his level of crimes and interfering with his business and how he wants to run the city, this won't go. Batman's the worst thing ever. Like, it's a total flip of me versus him as soon as it's not serving him and his goals. And I think that shows the self-centeredness versus the idealism and thinking of a better world for others as opposed to just for a better world for myself, comparing like Commissioner with Gordon and Batman, if you will.
Yeah, I do have one little gripe, though. I felt like, and again, it's not that long of a run, that Dent is a little underutilized. You see that Batman has created a relationship with Harvey Dent, and I thought that was going to go somewhere. I mean, I didn't think that, spoilers, that Harvey Dent was going to become Two-Face in this comic right away. But it did feel like that his storyline kind of petered out. It didn't go anywhere, and maybe that does later, but I felt that was a little underutilized.
No, I think that's fair because I would say the same thing, that it feels he is the most underutilized, and if he's the most, I think the second most underutilized, but more prevalent, obviously, is like Selena Kyle. Like, she's there.
Oh yeah,
like you see her kind of standing up for her. You see her become Catwoman, putting on the suit, but she's not one of the two main characters. She is totally the side piece in this story.
No, not the side piece.
Not yet. All right, so let's move into 3. This is where we're at that building, and Brendan, the Commissioner's like loose cannon, like kind of like actually when we just read Daredevil last week, the nuke of the story, like the guy that just blows everything up and asks questions later, right? Flies in with a squad to take out the building, trying to kill Batman. Batman's thermite blows up, and it's just him and his wits as he's surrounded, essentially. But by the end, Batman essentially realizes that he needs a man on the inside, which is going to be Gordon, right? And he sees that he's more... This is what we were talking about earlier, where he saves the cat and he paid for the suit. We see that he is more like Gordon, with compassion and not trying to take advantage of others than Gordon had realized at that time. Also, Gordon cheats on Barbara with Essen. Kind of had that going. Like, you kind of... Yeah, you hate it, but at the same time, it's the most human moment of this whole piece. Like, beyond just the fighting the crime and being bigger than you, it's that, he's pushing for a better city, and you can get behind that, and the way he stands up and pushes back, even on Flash, like we saw in the first issue where he beats him up and leaves him naked for dead. You're like, yeah. But then you realize he struggles with his own morality. Right? Like, I think it's his own idealism. Like, what is the ideal woman he sees in Essen, as opposed to the realism of Barbara that he needs to, he made a commitment to, and he's got a baby on the way. And I think that's part of Gordon's problem, is that his idealism can kind of blind him a little bit too much.
There's a lot here to unpack. I, at first, was angry because I thought this was very stereotypical. I thought, oh, this is cliche. Come on. And then, yes, you realize that Gordon is human like all of us. And I think that's where what I felt like was being done, is he's being humanized. He's not the hero of a story. He is a hero of the story, but he's fallible like the rest of us. And I was mad that they did this, but then it does come pay off later that the Commissioner finds out about it, and it's basically used to blackmail him into what they get. So it is a plot device eventually. At first, I thought it was something that was kind of stupid. I was like, oh, come on. Like, I get it. It's the 80s, whatever. But it is used in a tactful way eventually. So you have to get through the story to realize that, and how that comes out to play with the Commissioner. And, Gordon does do the right thing. She leaves and goes off, and he stays with his wife, and they go into marriage counseling, and, he's trying to do right by his family. So, we all have our faults, but it depends, when you get knocked down, do you get up?
Oh man, I see what you did there. I would also say this is also the issue where it shows how both Gordon and Bruce Wayne, because remember, he's like being slightly pursued by Gordon as to whether he's Batman or not, right? Based on Essen's intuition, if you will. And, he's hiding behind the women, hiding behind the money. He's being the playboy. But I think you also get this sense of isolationism from both of them. They both are hiding from something. And I think it's like sometimes when you have that shame, it makes you pull away from humanity a little bit. And you kind of have that question of who are we going to become? And I think you kind of transitioned us here into the final issue here, where we have the reveal, like you said, and he comes clean with the confession and such, right? And Batman's trying to investigate the Romans, but Catwoman interrupts, and basically goes ballistic. And basically the Gordons are kind of like assaulted, where the kid's stolen, and Gordon comes back to save them, and Bruce Wayne basically comes in on his motorcycle, is heavily implied to save them, right, with his armor. And I guess one of the questions I'd have is, did you think when Gordon said, my glasses are off and I can't see, do you think he actually couldn't see, or do you think he was just doing like that polite lie of like, we understand each other now. I won't tell your secret because you looked out for me. Now I'm going to look out for you.
Oh yeah, that was his way. That was his nod of we're eye to eye. See what I did there? Yeah, he's giving him the okay of, yeah, we're going to work together, and I'm going to let you go because it's for the greater good. You will be able to achieve what you can on your side, and I'll be able to achieve what I can on the other side. He'd reflected, in the previous issue of he saved the cat. He saved the person. He's wanting to do good. The commissioner is corrupt. And this is really where Gordon is evolving as a person, of that there has to be this gray area, and that he and Batman will be able to achieve better together.
So did they change in 1 year of failures, of not understanding what you were, how you stood for what you wanted in terms of both Gordon and, his idealism, and turning to, I think, a darker side of himself, as well as maybe idealizing this woman too much, as well as Batman, who couldn't strike fear into the hearts and realize that he was mortal, right? He was shot, lit up, stabbed more times than you really should be in a year, but he never gave up, right? And I think, can you change a city in a year? No, I don't think you're going to change the corruption of a city in a year. But I think there is still this element of hope and renewal by the end, especially when the Joker story comes around. It's not just a lead to the next issue. It is, but it's not just that. It's that idea of, we have another fight to go win. We have another reason to stand up and say, I'm not going to change this whole city overnight, but I'm going to change at least a couple people's lives. And each time you're building hope and is restoring renewal into people, you're hopefully moving the city in the right direction. Is kind of how I took the first year of Batman and Gordon's story here.
And I know we said it a couple of times of, do they change or does the city change? And I think ultimately by the end, it's both. That Gordon has evolved because of Batman and the city and himself, and so has Bruce. He has changed and evolved, and they have done it for each other as well. And it's this relationship that has evolved with the city, with each other. It's just so complex. There's so much to it. And I kind of go back to what I said at the beginning, is this comic, and like many other Batman stories, are just relatable because it's so us. And yeah, he's kicking trees, and knocking them over, with one kick, and he's getting shot and doing all these incredible, cool superhero things. But it also comes down to their humanity. And you can see that in both Bruce and Jim, which is pretty incredible. And another amazing comic. Highly recommend it, to check it out if you get a chance.
So hopefully you've been enjoying the series. I'll leave a little comic playlist down below if you want to check out more of our talks. My name's been Una. Thank you for spending time with us today. Peace.
Peace.